Hi, I'm Craig from Fox. Welcome to this edition of FoxCast, joined today by Gary, better known as Gary Does Solar. You may know him, you may have viewed his content online. Gary, thanks for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me here.
Well, we'll get straight into it, really, because obviously you've made a bit of a name for yourself online, and I've viewed your content, and some of my colleagues have, and it's obviously very popular. For anyone that's missed it, what does Gary Does Solar do, and why did you start it?
That's a good question. It's a channel to really sort of educate people and help people who are thinking about getting solar panels on their property or perhaps a home battery installed. I had solar panels installed in my house about 3 years ago now, and I remember when I was researching, it was quite new to me. Now, I have an electronics background, and a few neighbours of mine had solar panels put on years before I even thought about it. So when I did some research, I thought this was going to be quite straightforward. Connect with a local installer, get it installed. My goodness, it was such a minefield, and it took me about 3 months just to get a handle on it. And really learning about a whole new technology. I was quite surprised. And then I thought, if I've got a background in this and I'm struggling, what chance has everyone else got? When they're looking at solar and batteries. So I thought, I did a lot of presenting with my job. I worked in the mobile industry at the time. I did a lot of presenting, and I thought, well, maybe I could make a video to help people, just one video. And YouTube seemed to be quite a sort of a popular platform that people might look at. So I thought I'd make a YouTube video, and I thought that might be useful for me as well, just to learn how it was done. So I made one video, published it, and I got a lot of good feedback from it. I think it was helping people, so I made another video to go with it, a bit more detail. But after that, for anyone who's got involved in YouTube, it becomes like a drug after that. So yeah, I'm working on my 94th video today, which is ridiculous.
When was the first one? How long ago was it when you?
It was about 3 years ago.
3 years,
actually. Yeah, it was. Time flies.
Yeah.
So, and I just get lots of good feedback from the videos. It's really helping people, and I guess that's one of the problems that we've got today, is that it's such a complex technology. I think people have a desire to get solar and battery installed in their house, whether that's to help the environment or reduce energy bills, or even to keep the lights on during a power cut. But there's just so much involved with it that people really need help. And I didn't really feel at the time I was looking at it, there was a lot of help out there. So yeah, that's really what the channel's about. And I've created this monster now, and there's nothing I can do about it. I just have to keep going.
Yeah. It's a bit of a juggernaut, isn't it? And it snowballs, I guess. And did you expect it? I mean, I don't imagine you did to snowball to this degree.
Well, I was hoping that it wouldn't, because I was working for a startup company in the mobile industry at the time. So that was taking all my time anyway. So it was only meant to be 1 or 2 videos. But there's definitely a need out there for people to have some hand-holding. It's a lot of money. These systems cost, say £10,000 to £15,000. It's quite an investment for people, and so you want to get it right. So really, that was the idea, and hopefully, as I continue making these videos, that it's helping people. I go into more detail about specific, elements or topics about solar and battery, but I'll keep going so long as it's helping people.
Yeah, I think it does. And I think it's important, actually, that customers do have access to information, and it's presented and broken down in a way that they understand. I think that's key. Because like you've said, and I think probably sometimes within the industry itself, we lose sight of the fact that these people are spending a significant amount of money. Because to us, it's just another box going out the door. And I speak on behalf of Fox, but other manufacturers, we're shifting boxes. And actually, at the end of that is an end customer that has potentially dipped massively into their savings for something that they're expecting and hoping will pay back in a defined period of time and give them security in terms of energy going forward. And I think it's important we in the industry don't lose sight of that fact. And I think it's important that there are independent voices like yours that are cutting through some of the nonsense and some of the sort of marketing that's put out there by installers and by manufacturers. So I think, I can see how it's taken off and why it's taken off, most definitely.
Yeah. And actually, you raise a good point there, Craig. about the payback. So if you're making this investment, a multi-thousand-pound investment, when are people likely to see some kind of return on that? Some people make the argument that if you're buying, a new kitchen, for example, you don't look for a return. You don't expect a payback within a few years. But I think for many people, they are looking for. They want to know what they're going to get for that money, particularly if they're doing it to reduce their energy bills. How much is it going to save them, and how do those savings translate to that investment being returned over a period of years? I think 3 years ago when I was looking at it, well, actually, we can go back beyond that. If you go back 10 years ago when people were putting solar on their house, the payback periods were in the order of 15, 20 years. When I got solar for my property, that reduced to, I think my own payback's about 8.5 years. But prices keep falling, which is great. You'll see the prices of your own Fox equipment. The technology keeps moving on. It gets better, it gets cheaper. And so you could expect the payback period to fall as well. So I think today, you could look at certainly between 5 and 8 years, something like that. And what does that mean? It means after 5 years, you've effectively had that initial investment that you made, that you may have had to borrow money against, that will be returned to you. And then after that, it's just pure savings. And if you get your solar and battery installation right, it can actually earn you money. So you end up with a zero bill and actually earning money from the energy supplier, which sounds crazy, but this actually happens. And then you raised about, I do see my channel as an independent voice. I'm just a guy who's invested money in solar and I'm sharing my experiences. I don't have any products to sell or anything like that. And actually, maybe that's one of the good things about YouTube, is that there are a lot of channels out there that are just people willing to share their experiences. And I think that's really valuable in the market so that people can actually make an informed decision without being swayed to any particular manufacturers or anything like that.
Oh, I totally agree. And I think we're trying to do a little bit of a podcasting here, and it goes out on YouTube. But obviously, we've got a Fox badge just above my head there.
Yeah.
In terms of how that presents to the end consumer, they're always going to have that. Well, it's a promotional tool for them. So we can never have that kind of independence that you have.
Yeah, but
and that,
I think it works for you because many manufacturers will just build their products and sell them. They may do some advertising around that, but actually to open your doors and to do a podcast like this, where you're actually sharing everything, your experiences on everything, I think it's quite an honest way of doing things, and it just gives potential customers a view inside the Fox operation. I mean, you have very popular battery products. I think you're probably number one in the UK
in terms of volume. Yeah. In battery storage for residential. I just want to get that in because obviously, certainly from all the data we see, that's the case.
Yeah. But actually opening your door like this and allowing people inside to see how things work, to get your views on particular things in the industry, I think it's quite refreshing. And I'd love all manufacturers to be like that, but they're not. But again, maybe the whole world is changing, and now it's not just about advertising yourselves on TV. It's actually showing people what's going on inside, and that's actually more important. And I think that helps people make more informed buying decisions.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because it's exactly what we're trying to achieve here, is to give people a bit of an insight. I think for to a large extent, people go out and buy this equipment, very expensive equipment, and it's, behind it is a faceless Far Eastern manufacturer. And obviously we're just trying to get hit home to customers that we are, we have UK stakeholders, we've got a strong UK presence. There's people here on the ground, there's, humanising the company, if you like, and saying, look, here we are. And we're here to be shot at as well, because we don't, and I've made this point on episodes when I've been speaking to installers and other partners in the industry, we don't get it right every time, and that feedback is important. And on top of that, we have a large user community online of Fox owners, and we engage with that community. And look, I get things fired back at me because of that, because we open up, and you're there to be shot at. But I think it's important that we as a manufacturer do have that sort of open door policy, and we give people that insight into who we are and what we do, for sure.
Actually, if you look at, sorry to talk over you there, Craig, but if you look at even installation companies, so for your product to get into someone's home, you need a company there to actually install it. And even for them, things don't go perfectly all the time. And actually, the mark of a really good company is, what do you do about it if there is a problem? And I think we're going to see more and more about that in the marketplace. That's, to me, that's what's really going to work. Yeah.
And you will see this, I guess, because one of the things you do is, I think I've looked at your website, is you're putting information out there about what to look for when you're looking for an installer. What are the key sort of red flags? And I think it's actually quite a broad approach, isn't it? It's obviously online reputation, feedback, accreditations, and that the whole package. And I think you provided quite a lot of guidance on that to end users, don't you?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? If you're a customer and you're looking for solar and battery for your house, you're looking at particular brands, which might be Fox. Who do you trust? Who do you trust? Is it the installer? Is it Fox? Is it a government website giving information? Is it a YouTube channel like mine? You've got to trust someone, because unless you become a total expert in the topic and you know everything about it, you've got to trust other people's opinions. And maybe just wider than solar and battery, maybe this will happen for most products and services going forward, that actually the people that you could potentially trust are people who don't have an axe to grind either way. They're just giving their honest and truthful opinions. And I think that's certainly the aim of my channel. And of course, it's not the only one. There are quite a few YouTube channels looking at different particular areas. And I think we're going to see more and more of that. And then people can make their own decision whether they trust me or these other YouTube channels. But at least they've got options now. And hopefully, as a result of all of that, people can make the right decisions about what they're going to spend their money on.
And there's no hiding now. I think there was a point, I go back in the industry about 13 years, and there was a point when you could hide a little bit. And I started out in installations at an installation company, but now, and I think what it's doing is driving up standards particularly in terms of after sales care. And that's not to say there aren't one or two out there still that, don't provide the best service to their customers. But primarily what I'm seeing now is a real shift towards customer service, because there is no hiding, because people have got access to review sites, to content like yours, to AI, and to all those other resources and channels for information. I think it's having a positive effect.
Yeah, I mean, so in the mobile industry, I was working with pretty much most of the large organizations in there. And it was really, if you wanted to do well in that industry, you had to be the best. You really had to be on top of your game. And so when I come to the energy industry, so I'm retired from the mobile industry now, and I basically, I don't want a job, but I seem to be getting more increasingly involved with companies in the energy industry. And what I'm finding actually is, I don't know if the quality is always there. I don't, certainly with installers, I think there was over 1,000 new solar installers who started up in the UK, in the last 12, 18 months, 1,000. And you have to wonder if the quality is going to be there, or are some of those companies purely entering the market because they just see an opportunity. Maybe they're electricians who now see, well, why don't we add solar to our sort of remit? Why don't we add heat pumps? Because that's, more revenue opportunity for us. It may not be for the right reasons, it may, and that worries me. And actually, I have a directory myself where people can go and actually see installers that I would be happy to spend my money with. So yeah, I would like to see quality being raised, and I think you kind of hit the nail on the head, Craig. The way to do that is actually to really shine a light on everything. And the companies that are doing really well, doing the right things, that's not to say they get everything right first time, but it's what they do to fix that. those are the companies that are going to win in this market, in my opinion.
Yeah, and we've seen that in over the last few years. It's the companies that get it right, that do it properly, that tend to stick around. And you're right, actually. There's a constant influx of new installers into the industry. But what I think is the case now is they get found out sooner, and I think and it's very competitive. And I think for all the reasons we've discussed already, they do get found out. So I think gradually in time this is improving, and the cream rises to the top ultimately. And the companies that and we have a policy here, and we've tightened this quite a bit, where we now have different tiers of installer accreditation with us. This is outside of their more general accreditation and everything else, so that we can confidently refer end customers to installers we know that are going to look after them, price fairly, provide good after sales.
Yeah.
And we're making that call as well, because we see how important it is, because it reflects badly on us. Because ultimately, you've said it yourself, we manufacture a product, we sell that into distribution, it goes from distribution into an installer, from an installer to an end user. If something goes wrong between us and that end user, quite often they come to us. And then we're dealing with a situation which may be not of our making, may not be a product fault, but is an installation error. And it can get messy at that point, especially if the installer is unresponsive and is a fit and forget sort of approach, walked away, and we have to pick that up. So we're becoming more conscious of that and making sure we tighten, our installer scheme to make sure that we vet installers as much as we can. I think that's important.
And it's interesting, isn't it? So let's take a situation. Customers bought a solar and battery system, which includes a Fox inverter and battery unit, and the installer, maybe they're not on your list of accredited installers, and they do a mediocre job, so the battery's not performing as well as it should be. That customer could then go away with an inferior impression of Fox products, where in actual fact the product itself is doing, it's fine. It was the installation that was a problem. And so for you to have these tiered levels, I don't know what they are, but let's say bronze, silver and gold. If I was an installer and I was on the bronze level, let's say, I'd be on the phone to you and say, Craig, what do I have to do to get to the next level?
Don't worry, that happens every day. We get those calls daily.
Yeah, which is great, and that's helping push up quality generally for your own products, but the industry in general. I definitely want to see more of that, because I'm old enough to remember double glazing in the 1980s, 1990s, I think, where it was just a cowboy industry, and if nothing was done, it could be the same for the solar industry, and that just kills it for everybody. So
I think it was actually. I remember 2011, 2012, there was a lot of companies that migrated directly from window sales into solar, at the point at which the feed-in tariff became sort of incredibly attractive, and obviously there was that boom at that point. So it did happen. And I think for the reasons we've given, I think we're probably beyond the point where that could happen again, but there is always that danger. And we need to sort of keep a close eye on that at all levels. I was going to sort of move on to some questions about educating end users and what you do. What's the single biggest myth about solar or batteries that you're constantly having to correct?
I don't know if there's so much in the way of myths. I suppose some people think if I get 8 panels on the house, they're going to have a 0 electricity bill for the rest of time. Some people may think that. I would like to think that most people would know enough to know that it's going to help with the bills, but it's not necessarily going to eliminate them. To do that, you need a fairly big installation. So in my house, it's a 4-bed detached house, and we converted the loft into another 2 rooms. 5 people in the family now, actually 4 now. My daughter is now living and working in London. Fairly high energy bill, and we have 17 panels on a south-facing roof. And I think people will be aware that south-facing is actually quite a good orientation because the sun tracks across the sky and it's at its highest point. in the south at midday. For us, that means a zero electricity bill, which is great. And we have an EV as well, so that's including the EV charging. But it might not be that for everyone. So actually having some tools available where you could put in some details about your property, which way the roof's faces, how many panels you might be able to get on it, to give you an indication of how much electricity that might generate. And then over the year, you could compare that annual generation with your annual usage. And then you get a rough idea before you do anything, whether it's going to work for you or not. So that's some of the, I have a software engineering background, so I developed some utilities that I've made available to people so that they can actually carry out this. You know, it only takes a few minutes. But that's a good starting point to see realistically what a solar and battery installation will do for you before you start committing monies.
Yeah, I mean, there was something called the SAP calculation that was kind of the NCS sort of standard for calculate, and it was all based on what you've said there: roof pitch, orientation from south, shading, which is always a tricky one because installers would notoriously under sort of estimate the impact that shading might have, and again, that's another thing that customers need to understand, isn't it? You know, maybe they've got a perfect roof, but they've got huge trees overlooking.
And it's trees actually that are particularly the problem. Yeah. If you've got shading from other buildings or things like that, the solar panels, today's solar panels, or any solar panels that were manufactured in the last sort of 5-6 years, they do have some mechanisms to mitigate against that. But trees are the solar panel's worst enemy. And for that kind of shading, you actually need some extra electronics to mitigate against that. So again, it's more for the customer to learn and understand. And of course, it's more cost for their system. So yeah, it gets quite complex quite quickly when people start looking into it. And I think that's where having more information, and I know on the Fox website there's quite a lot of information to help people, you know, when they're beginning that journey, because the last thing you want to do is scare a customer, you know, on day one of them thinking about getting solar and battery. You need to lead them in gently, so that they don't run away thinking, I wish I hadn't looked at this.
Yeah, the other thing you get, particularly at this time of year, is customers will say, have a system installed in November, December. They've been given their annual generation estimate from their installer, you know, 6 kilowatt system, you know, 5,400 kilowatt hours, whatever it is, depending on their circumstances. And they're seeing next to no generation at the moment, and they panic. They think, well, you know, I wish installers would explain that better in terms of how, you know, and a lot do in terms of the, you know, the generation curve across the 12-month period, and you know, just wait till you get to March, April, and you'll see a complete difference. But we do get coming into us from end users those calls. My system isn't generating enough. There's something wrong, and it's like, well, no, actually, you know, it's perfectly normal for this time of year. Please go back to your installer. They would have done those calculations, and rest assured, of course, if there is a problem, and there can be from time to time, you know, that needs to be looked into, but quite often there's no issue. So
I mean, you just have to look at the last 2 weeks here in the UK in many regions. The sun has just not bothered coming out really. So if you had your installation 2 weeks ago, you're probably thinking, I've just spent all this money and it's not doing anything. So it can be quite quite stressful. But actually, you're absolutely right. There is a generation curve over the year, and you know, right now in January, don't expect too much solar generation. You will still get some, but it won't be every day, that's for sure.
It's shifting as well, isn't it, in terms of, we talked earlier about return on investment and sort of the benefits. Historically, you know, you put panels on the roof, you're going to get generation, you can self-consume that. Batteries became a thing as we went through the late 2010s, and it's okay, you can now increase that self-consumption by storing energy, and also you get a small export payment. But more recently, of course, with time of use tariffs, and in the last few years, we've got sort of flex services, grid trading services. We work with a couple of partners, Capture being one. They have AI optimization. We work with Axel as well, and they have a virtual power plant scheme now, which pays customers a minimum amount every month simply for having their batteries available for flex. So all these additional potential revenue streams are now becoming a thing. And again, it's educating the customer and making them aware of those, isn't it?
Yeah, I really like it because it used to be that you turned on your socket in your house and it just supplied electricity, and you didn't have to worry about where that came from, and you just paid your bill every month. And that's how it used to be. It was a utility and it was just always there. Okay, you might have the odd power cut here and there, but generally it was always there. Now we're in a world where where there is an increasing number of renewables, not just solar generation but wind generation, and that changes the system. It becomes a bit more, what's the word? I'm not going to say chaotic, but it's a bit more intermittent. You know, the sun's not always shining, of course, and it may not always be windy. And so you're relying on a mix of different generation types. So how do you kind of balance that spikiness of supply? And I think this is where batteries come in. And I know, Fox, you're doing the residential stuff, but I think you're doing consumer products as well. And in the UK, we will see an ever-increasing rollout of huge amounts of battery capacity, because effectively when you've got the high spikes in supply, you can just store that in a battery and then bring it back out when there is less wind and solar generation. And that's on a national scale. But then for residential purposes, if someone's got a home battery in their home, like you say with companies like Capture and Axel Energy, they can take part themselves, because that is an asset that can be combined with hundreds of thousands of other homeowners with batteries to provide what they call a virtual power plant. And that virtual power plant will be run by a company of some kind. It could be an energy provider, could be independent providers like Capture and Axel. And they can then provide services to the grid operator, NESO. And I just love it. And I think it engages people with the whole energy management system with the UK. I think certainly a lot of the homeowners that I speak to, they're learning a lot. They're educating themselves about how energy is supplied and how that will change over the next few years. And really importantly, how they can take part themselves with their own assets, their home battery, and they get paid for it. So that's over and above everything else. So I really like it. I like where it's going. I'm going to be doing a video shortly with one of the suppliers that you mentioned. And I want to encourage people to start using their home battery for these kind of purposes. And I guess, Craig, that leads on to the next thing. Not everyone can get solar power on their house.
Yep.
But they could get a home battery. And because the home battery, you know, look at the model that you've got behind you, that can be put, you know, on an outside wall in a garage, really tucked out the way. You wouldn't know it was there, but it would do its stuff. I really like that idea of, you know, I won't say every home in the UK, but if most homes in the UK can have a battery, that really helps us as a country manage a renewables world where the supply is, you know, intermittent. And so long as these companies that are involved with this pay the consumer fairly for the use of their asset, then I think the whole thing works. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens over the next few years. But I'm actually quite excited about it. Yeah,
I think you're right. And I've made this point so many times that when you scale residential energy storage, the impact it can have is significant in terms of balancing the grid, in terms of dealing with that intermittency problem you get with renewables.
yeah,
We haven't really scratched the surface yet. I mean, there's a significant amount of storage out there, as we know. And you mentioned it earlier. It's interesting that you did, in terms of energy storage becoming a consumer product. You buy it off the shelf, plug-in devices. Now, we're not alone. We have a plug-in balcony solution which is rolled out across Europe in huge numbers. We actually have more of that type of battery there now than we do the sort of batteries that you're referring to behind me. Plugs in the wall socket. The problem we have here is our regulations don't allow for it currently, but there is some suggestion that may change. Do you get many inquiries about those sort of solutions at all?
I am starting to get more and more. I do a lot of business with people in Germany, and I know it's really popular in Germany. So effectively, if you live in a flat, you can stick some solar panels on your balcony. you've got this battery which you could even store on your balcony as well. And like you say, you just plug it into an electrical socket and that's it. And it will, any power that it generates, it can stick that into your home supply. And if your home doesn't need it, then it would effectively export it back to the grid, and you may get paid for that as well. So it's a really easy and less expensive way to take part in this, this revolution, really. But you're right, in the UK, the electrical system is slightly different. So there is work to be done before those kind of systems could become popular here. But I hope that is being worked on, and it's probably something I'll look at soon. I think I've got so many topics that I need to cover. You might think I've done 94 or 93 videos so far, working on the 94th. You might think I've covered everything, but I've probably got a list of another 60, 70 topics that I still haven't even touched yet. And it's just, the deeper you get into this, the more there is to learn. Things like bi-directional EV charging, where your car can effectively power the home in addition to your home battery, and balcony solar that you just mentioned. So, yeah, it is quite exciting. And I just love that the technology is really opening up lots of opportunities. And I'm sure, Craig, if we were speaking this time next year, there'll be a whole load of new things that we could talk about that just haven't been invented yet. And I just love that about the industry.
Well, I think you've mentioned it, actually. In addition to I understand with the balcony solar, there are various working groups, parliamentary working groups, and there's conversations with energy suppliers all the time with government trying to push this and push change to allow it in some form. You've mentioned also EV to grid, which is an interesting one, because you speak to some people and they're saying that's the next big thing. It's EV to grid. And we're working on some products. Should be out at the end of this year. One or two other manufacturers as well. We're not alone in that.
Okay.
And then you speak to some people and say they're not convinced. They think EV to home has, huge potential, but EV to grid they're not convinced by. Not least because the way that it works, you have to get lots of different car manufacturers on board. And then there is the customer's willingness and this changing mindset, really. You've got your car plugged in, are you comfortable with waking up in the morning to find that a significant chunk of that energy has been used to support the grid, and then suddenly, that journey that you were... So I think, there's maybe some challenges there to overcome in terms of, again, educating the public and putting in the, parameters and safeguards that ensure that their batteries are not drained. I'm sure that will be the case anyway. Yeah. But
I could give you a view on that if you want.
Yeah, sure, please.
I'm still sort of forming my view, but here's kind of where I've got to at the moment. You absolutely can use your EV to power the home and also send export or send that power back to the grid. And that's called V2H, vehicle to home, and V2G, vehicle to grid. The trouble is there's not much in it for the EV manufacturer. They don't really get a lot of benefit from it other than that you might buy their particular EV if it has that capability. But of course, you soon reach a point where most EVs will have that capability and therefore that differentiation disappears. But it does affect the life of the battery. So if you're using the battery day in and day out to supply the home and or send to the grid, that degrades the battery faster. And EV manufacturers, they might have an issue with that because that's effectively a future warranty problem. So what I'm seeing at the moment is that for the manufacturers that do support that capability today, they are limiting the amount of power that can come from the battery. And that might be, let's say, 3 kilowatts, something like that. So you can have 3 kilowatts of power coming from your battery to power the home or to export the grid. But in the great scheme of things, that's not a lot compared to, what a Fox battery can output, for example. So there's a real limitation there. And I'm not sure that's going to be exciting enough for people. And then on the other side, it's going to take us a few years before we get to the point where we have sufficient standardization within the UK to allow all this to happen. And I've got a lot of experience of that from my previous life in the mobile industry. I was involved in standardization of quite a lot of things, really. It takes years absolute years. And the reason why it takes so long is that all parties have to be involved in the ecosystem, and they don't always agree on day one. And even after 5 years, they still don't agree, and it's trying to find a path through where you can get something meaningful agreed, that the technology, the manufacturers like yourself can then build technology against those specifications. It's a hard job, and it takes years. So I personally feel we've got a while yet before it becomes mainstream, but I am seeing another route to this. There are manufacturers that have a DC coupled home battery system, and I think Fox fits into that as well. And they're supplying a DC EV charger within that environment. So everything is hidden behind the inverter.
I know the manufacturer you're referring to, but we won't mention
that. Yeah. And actually, this solves another problem for the DNO this time, the distribution network operator. They want to know how much your home could physically export back to the grid, because they need to protect their own infrastructure. So solar panels, of course, could do that. A Fox home battery could do that. Your EV can now potentially do that. And this all adds up. And if the number's too big, it really puts stress on the local distribution infrastructure. But if you can hide everything behind a DC, in a DC coupled situation, so that everything's hidden behind the inverter, that solves a lot of problems, I think. So I'd like to think that Fox is maybe looking down this route as well with your R&D team.
Exactly that route, yeah. Because there is a danger here. We listen to all this chatter. This is the next big thing, vehicle to X, whether it's V2H, V2G. And the danger is you're trying to be ahead of the curve. You actually go in the wrong direction. And I think the direction that you've outlined is the one we're looking at for the reasons you give. And I think it's a real frustration for everybody in terms of the network restrictions, the amount of solar generation that has been lost because it's been rejected by the DNO. It's huge. I speak to installers all the time, and it's quite regional. The geography matters, but a lot of systems just get knocked back or export limited, or more increasingly there's restrictions on the actual output capacity of the inverter. So it's frustrating, really, that we have these infrastructure issues that prevent the rollout of microgeneration and hold it back a little bit. I think that will change, but those challenges are still there, aren't they?
Yeah, I'm particularly worried by it, actually, because and you've heard probably time and time again people saying that our energy infrastructure is like 50 years old, and it's not really changed since then. And it's only really in the last 10 years or so, with the advent of home solar and battery, that's now putting extra pressure on that infrastructure. I mean, who'd have thought that homes would be sending electricity back to the grid? Mm-hmm. That wasn't even a thing until about 10 years ago. And I guess the people who were in charge of the infrastructure design at the time never contemplated that. Or if they did, they kept kicking the can down the road, thinking it'll never happen. But the problem is, if you don't think ahead, and that's why it's always important for any company to be paying people to be thinking 10 or 20 years ahead, you're gonna miss out on this. And of course, the grid operator is not a company. It's absolutely fundamental to the prosperity of the UK, and I think they missed a trick here, big time.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think we're
and there's no money now. There's no money to invest. The country's got money problems, and so now it's a priority of where any money that the country does have, where does it go? Does it go into health, or does it go into energy? So, for the government running the country, it's not an easy problem. But we need leaders who are bold enough to see that actually energy is probably fundamental to everything else that we do.
It affects everything. The price of everything is affected by energy, because everything, goods get transported. They're manufactured, transported. Businesses have to keep the lights on. It impacts on everything. It should be very high on the list of priorities, shouldn't it?
Yeah, I would like to think so, but it would need someone really bold in leadership to divert sufficient investment into the energy infrastructure to get prices down. I think if you get energy prices down, a lot of the other problems, they don't necessarily disappear, but they are diminished, somewhat. Yeah.
I think we're on the same page there. So we'll see how things pan out. But there's some interesting and positive noises being made now. I think the support for renewables that was announced recently is interesting. It's a headline at the moment. We're still waiting on detail, aren't we? Are you getting inquiries about that already?
Yeah. The problem for me, on one hand, I think it's really good that the government is still interested in subsidising effectively home solar in the UK. I like that. On the other hand, I wish they'd come out with the detail at the same time, because all it does is stop people buying because they think, well, okay, this sounds really good. I'm going to potentially get a loan. I couldn't afford the top end Fox battery that I want, but if I wait a few months, when this loan that the government's talking about comes into play, then I could afford it. So I'm just going to wait. And I don't think that helps anybody. So I wish they'd come out with all the detail at the same time. It's not hard. It's just you just figure out what your policy is going to be and put it in place. But I'd rather have something rather than nothing, I guess.
Yeah. The point you've just made there, I've actually had a couple of installers on to this podcast recently, and I've made the same point to them. They're not seeing it just yet, but it was very early, actually, when I spoke to them, not long after the announcement. It'd be interesting to see how that pans out. And I made the exact point. How is this going to be delivered? How are installers going to access it? How high is the bar going to be set? In terms of how you access this funding on behalf of customers. No detail. And there is that danger that customers see the headlines and say, okay, well, that's coming. And I've been thinking about this for 6 to 12 months. I'll wait another 6 months because, or would it be retrospective? Can you apply? We don't know. There's no detail yet. I know that there's voices within the industry far more powerful than mine that are making that very point to try and get some detail and get this fleshed out a little bit so everybody knows where they stand. But I think they need to do that pretty quickly.
Yeah. So let's see what happens this year, 2026, brand new year. Lots of, it's all heading in the right direction, and I think there's a lot more visibility of what a solar and battery system can do for you, both on saving money on energy bills, helping the environment at the same time, and I think that's actually really important for a lot of people, and also keeping the lights on in your house if there is a power cut as well, because that's what these battery systems, the ones behind you, they have this capability. And
I was going to ask you about that, actually. I was going to get your views on that.
Yeah, well, let's go then.
So sorry to interrupt, but I just think it's a good time to bring that up. You must get these questions asked a lot with regards to backup. One of the things that we see a lot is customers aren't told by their installer that that it's an option, and automatically expect the system to continue generating when there's a power cut, and it doesn't, because obviously the EPS has not been connected. And then there's the whole home backup argument. People want whole home, but obviously there are limitations to what these systems can output in a power cut. Now ours, you could output on a 10 kilowatt system up to 10 kilowatts in effect, but obviously there's certain loads that it doesn't like. Heavy inductive loads are going to make it go into a check-in loop because of EPS overload.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself having to sort of explain this quite a bit to end customers?
I've done a few videos on that topic. So you're absolutely right. Not all batteries have the backup capability, and again, it's understanding why that's the case. Why don't all batteries offer this? And it's because in the event of power cut, you can't just run things off your home battery. You have to island the house from the electricity grid, because there could be engineers working outside in your street to try and fix the problem if it's a local one. And if your home battery is now powering your house, that power has the ability to go and electrocute those engineers working. So you need a system in the home battery, or as a separate unit, sometimes called a gateway, which effectively cuts the link between your house and the outside world. But once that's done, the home battery then can act as the power supply for the house, and it can either power all the devices in the house, or it can power a subset. And like you say, some devices are a little bit problematic, especially for induction and things like that. But yeah, I do see a duty of care from the manufacturers to spell this out correctly. And I would like to see the installers being honest and not trying to sell a product or a solution by saying the things that it won't do and only concentrating on the things that it will do, assuming that the customer will think, oh, right, I'm going to get power supply backup as part of the solution, when in actual fact they don't. Because once you've spent the money, the installer's gone, they're on the next job. And so, yeah, education is the key. And I hope, I try and do that with some of my videos, but not everyone will watch my videos, of course.
No, of course. I think it's important that any customers that are watching this will, if it's something you are interested in and something you would like, then you make that point to your installer. What installers will tend to do, it adds cost to the system, and in a very competitive marketplace, they're not necessarily going to specify something that adds £500-600 to the cost, unless it's requested specifically. So you need to have that honest conversation with customers. All of our products, Fox, for example, and I'm speaking just on behalf of Fox, all have EPS output, but obviously there are ways and means to access that. You've mentioned them. There's a gateway, or there is the option to wire into an EPS board, a split board arrangement, and power whatever it is you choose to power on those circuits because it's working grid time. So there's ways around it. There's different options, but it's just having that conversation with customers. Some customers don't care. Well, I've had one power cut in 5 years. Why do I need to worry? But there is an expectation, I think, for customers. They've got a battery. It's a backup, as well as being a method by which you store energy or buy it in cheap and discharge during peak rates. There is an expectation, I think, that it has a backup functionality, and it's not often explained, I don't think, by customers, by installers. Sorry.
Yes. I mean, some people have got health equipment in their house that really needs to be on all the time. And I would hate to see an installer going into that property to sell a solution that doesn't instantly see the need for a backup system. And that, again, I'm just worried by that. A good installer, and I'm sure the installers accredited, on your website, will do that. But there are a lot of installers out there who just won't care. They just see a sale, and that worries me. Yeah. Yeah.
No, we do see that, and it's something that we're trying to push through in our training as well, to make sure customers are fully advised on what the options are with EPS and what the limitations are as well. That's also important.
Yeah.
Going back to YouTube then, so you've got a big audience, and that comes with and that audience means you've got influence, and that sort of breeds responsibility. Do you feel a sense of responsibility? Are you very guarded in what you say sometimes because you don't want things to be misunderstood? And I get from speaking to you today, in terms of how you communicate, you do so in a very clear, measured way, and I guess that needs to follow through to your videos as well.
Yeah, it was really interesting that you raised that then. So people talk about influencers and YouTube influencers, and of course, I think that's really true. And I think we're going to see more and more on that in terms of how companies advertise their products and services. They would do well to have someone who can talk as independently as possible about their product and services and say it's good for these reasons, and equally honestly say, and these are the things that I don't like about it, but hopefully the company can improve on that over time. So yeah, I'm well in that space. I'm not sure I ever wanted to be. I'm 60 years old. I'm retired. Maybe I should just be on a beach somewhere. But I do feel that responsibility. And if I say a particular product is good, then I know that some people will make buying decisions against that because they'll trust my view on it. And so I take that really, really seriously. I guess I'm fortunate that in my previous life in the mobile industry, I was a subject matter expert in a whole range of technologies, and people would make decisions based on my views. And I had a responsibility then to manage that very carefully. So I do the same thing here with the videos.
So disclaimers and caveats and stuff like that, just to give yourself a little bit of, or not.
I think I always put things across as my opinion, and I'm entitled to an opinion just like you are and everyone else is. And if it's your opinion, then you can't be sued against that, even if your opinion is wrong.
Yeah.
So there's a basic foundation level, but yeah, you've got to be very careful, because you are effectively putting your words on digital media, which will be there for the end of time. And so, yeah, it's quite scary in one sense, but I think I just like to be honest about things and say how I feel about things. Do an incredible amount of research beforehand to make sure that things that I am saying are as accurate as they can be. And try not to be bought. That's the main thing. Actually, Craig, I think that's probably one of the most important things, especially if you're on a platform like YouTube, is that you can be bought. I've had offers, all sorts of offers, to fly me all over the world to go and promote particular products, and I've turned them all down. And I could understand that there are people on YouTube who, perhaps they're going to get a cash injection for promoting a particular product, and that would really help them in their channel and the things that they would want to do. But actually, unknowingly, they're being bought at the same time. So I want to stay well away from that for as long as I can. And I think that's really important, and that helps keep the channel authentic. For me, it's all about trust. I want to be a trusted advisor for people, but it takes years to build that kind of credibility, and you could lose it in an instant. And so I'm always mindful of that. Yeah.
Have you ever had any kickback from, say, a manufacturer because you've said something about their product they didn't like, or is that happened?
I've never had that.
No.
I mean, there was one product that was in the market. It was a carbon offset monitor. I don't know if you're familiar with that technology, but the idea was they would sell you a box that you could stick into your solar and battery system, and it would measure how much solar generation you were getting, and then they would pay you an additional amount for that, which sounds like great. It's like free money, but the whole premise was wrong. And at the time, I felt it was a bit of a Ponzi scheme, this particular product. So I made a video about it, but I purposely didn't make it about that product. I just made it about the concept, if you like. And what I found now is that company is in real trouble now, and they've probably got some legal problems as well. But I didn't want to put myself in the middle of that. So it's about how do you handle, a particular topic like that is about let's say a certain product. How do you handle that in the right way so that you don't end up with a lawsuit?
It's a difficult one, that, isn't it? And it's interesting you said what you said just now, actually, because not yourself, but there's one or two other. Well, there's one particular influencer that did a feature on our product, and it was largely fair, actually, but there was a few things that were actually incorrect, that were factually incorrect, and we was kind of like, well, what do we do here? And what we don't want to do is be a company that, stamps our feet or does what you suggested earlier, sort of tries to sort of curry favour with these influencers and somehow, incentivise them to be positive. But so what we've decided to do instead is say, look, there's several out there. Let's reach out to them and let's say we're here. And I think that was our initial approach to yourself, really, is to say we're here. Our products are in the market. If you've got any questions, there's anything there that concerns you or anything that's being fed back to you by your viewers, speak to us, and we'll give you the information. We'll clarify things. So if you are, for example, going to review a Fox product, you would do that independently, and that would be expected because that's the whole premise of what you do. It's that you're this independent expert, if you like, giving your advice and your recommendations to customers. But as long as, from our perspective, that's informed and it's accurate, then that's as much as we can do, and as much as I think we ought to do in that sense. And I think a conversation between yourself, us, and the other key figures that do have influence through these channels, I think is a good thing, because it means we can feed them information and make sure they're up to date.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think if I was reviewing, and I don't want my channel to be a product review channel. I think that's for other people to do.
There's
But
others that do that more.
let's say I was in that space and I wanted to do a product review on, let's say, a Fox product. I would absolutely get in touch with you and say, look, here's what I want to do. Here's the rough storyboard of the video I want to do. Can I get access to the product? That's not necessarily you sending me a product, but maybe I come and see it in operation, play with the app, see how easy the app is to use and things like that. Because that allows me to make a more informed review of the product rather than just doing a video just based on the data sheet, for example, and comparing the data sheet with another manufacturer.
I think that's what happened in this case. They had a data sheet which was outdated. Right. It had been circulated ahead of the actual formal release of the product. There was a couple of things that were, so yeah, absolutely. What you say there, is something that we're trying to encourage, really.
Yeah, and I think that helps educate the market. People get a more accurate video for a start, and that's not to say that you as the manufacturer would then dictate what happens in the video. And I do see this, by the way, is that some YouTubers will come to a commercial arrangement with a manufacturer to review a product. The YouTuber will be paid for that in advance, but my goodness, there'll be a big contract against this, saying you won't say anything negative against the product. And that to me is absolutely the wrong way to do things. And I think that says a lot about the manufacturer, that if you're a manufacturer that has a good product, it will sell itself. You just need the right people to talk about the product, talk about the features and the benefits and why that's so important. But again, the role of the influencer, I think, is going to become more and more important, because people are struggling to find out who they can trust. And in the same way that I really open myself up on my channel, it sounds like Fox is doing the same thing, particularly with this podcast that you're doing, really opening yourself up to the market, warts and all. Yeah. And I think that's a really strong foundation for people to build trust on. Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's more important than ever. And I see it myself. Again, 100% not with yourself, but one or two others, and we know they have a commercial arrangement with some of our competitors, and there's nothing we can do about it, and we're not going to complain about it. It is what it is. But we didn't want to be that company, rightly or wrongly. Maybe we should be trying to emulate what they're doing, and So yeah, I mean, I think it's important, isn't it? Because you build trust, you build an audience, and it's important that those people watching that content know that is independent advice and honest.
And there's nothing like having the end customers themselves giving a review of a Fox product that they've bought. You can't really beat that. That's even better than someone like myself doing it. It's
and also we've said a few times, that there are all these avenues now for customers to give their feedback, whether it's a Facebook group or it's an online forum or it's a review site. And we've acted. One of the things we do with our Facebook community, run by Will Eccles. Will Eccles, I had as a guest here. We do speak relatively frequently. He'll feedback what people are saying, and we've implemented changes to the product based purely on the feedback we've received from the community. And there's now a history of that. We've not done it once, we've done it a number of times, and we'll continue to do so. So listening is important. And
I know this myself, actually, Craig, because I've had, I speak to hundreds of people, and I've had customers with Fox equipment who've perhaps had a problem with the app or a feature that they would have liked to have seen that wasn't there. And I've seen Fox act on that and fix that. And in fact, there was one just a couple of days ago that was sorted in that way. And that really gives me the sign of a really good company, that they're listening to their customers and acting upon it. I'd like to see more of that.
Yeah. And I said earlier, we still get things wrong from time to time, but we're trying very hard to be that company and reach out, listen, feedback into R&D, and there are genuinely things that haven't even been launched yet that are on the back of feedback and requests that have come through the community. So we are sort of actively looking to implement that advice. So
it's good to hear.
I think I've kept you long enough, Gary, but I've a couple of questions to finish off, if that's okay.
Sure.
What's one thing you wish that every homeowner understood before buying solar or making that investment?
Well, one thing. What it will do for them. That they really understand what it will do for them and what it will not do for them. In other words, it might give you a zero bill, but it might not. What effect it will have on the environment in terms of reducing the customer's carbon footprint, and what it will do in the event of a power cut, let's say. I think it's those basic things on certainly those 3 points. I think that would be the one thing I would like to see customers being more educated about.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think we see it. We get inquiries sometimes through from end users. I had one the other day actually. It was an end user. Don't want to go into too much detail. And the conversation went along the lines of, it came through our service team, and this woman was quite agitated because and basically what she basically said to me was, I've had this system installed. I don't know what it does. I don't know how it works. I'm looking at this app, it makes no sense to me. And she'd spent a significant amount of money on this system. And I think, how can that be? How can it be that this lady is in that position, that she's spent all that money on, and she has no clue what it is or what it does? And I think what we did is we took the time to talk her through and give her some reassurance. And I think we did that in the end. But it's still the case, despite what we said earlier about the way now that people have all this access to information and people are making more informed decisions than they were previously, there's still those ones that are slipping through the net that are sold a system. Somebody comes into their living room and they leave with a signature. The customer doesn't know what they've purchased. Maybe given some really sort of wild claims about what it's going to make them, and like you said, eliminate their electricity bill, whatever it will be. So we're still seeing that. So I think, we've kind of repeating what we've said a number of times through this discussion. It's so important that people are informed and that they do their research.
Yeah. And I know it costs time and effort to do that, but it's a lot of money at stake here. So I would hope that people would see the need to do at least a little bit of research. I try and make it as easy as possible on my channel, and I think Fox does the same on your website and with this podcast. So that's the only way. And if people are not prepared to spend a bit of time and effort to do this, well, then they're really opening themselves up to some problems down the line, I think.
I want to finish. I'm just going to ask you a little bit about you, actually, because you've given us a little bit of your work history and your background prior to sort of starting this channel. I imagine this is taking over quite a lot of your life now. Is it pretty much front and centre, would you say? Is it a living? Or is it not quite got to that yet?
It does generate revenue, but that's not my primary motivation for doing this. I've done well in the mobile industry, and so I retired a year ago, and I've got enough money that I can live off and have a happy retirement. And really, I just want to travel the world with my wife and family and have holidays and things like that. I would say that's half the things that I want to do. And the other half, the thing that really lights me up, and it's why I actually gave up my job in the mobile industry, which was a really good job, was whenever I was waking up in the morning, all I was thinking about was solar, home solar. And in life, whatever it is, if you're in a job, but you're thinking about something else all the time, it's maybe a sign that, to change things if you can. And I was fortunate enough to be in a position where I could change things. So, that's all I want to do. Spend time with my wife and family, going on holidays and things like that. and the Gary Does Solo YouTube channel. If I can do those two things for the rest of my life, however long or short that might be, I'm happy. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it's a great story, and like I said, I've viewed your content a number of times, and very impressed with the content that you deliver, how you deliver it, and the very easy and measured way that you communicate with those watching. That particularly, it's very easy for somebody like myself that's in the industry that is surrounded by this day to day, but and sometimes we make the mistake of when we're communicating with end users, whether it's through marketing, through our website, we forget there's things that we take for granted that the end customers have no clue what it is or how it works. And I think we've got to re-educate ourselves here in the industry, not just us at Fox as manufacturers, but also installers, how we communicate with end users and how we break things down in a way that is understood. And I think your channel and one or two others like you do that very well and have a really important place. So I'm really pleased that it's been a success for you. It's nice, actually, the story there that you've retired and you've moved into something that's a bit of a passion as well, and keeps you busy, I guess. Outside of that, anything, of interest outside of that? I'm just trying to get a handle on you as a person, really.
I think, my wife really wants to complete all the Wainwrights in the Lake District. And for those people who don't know what a Wainwright is, I think there's 214 mountains maybe they're not quite mountains, but in the Lake District. And we've done 65% of them so far. I've not agreed to this target that my wife has got, but I just come along. And so that, I really enjoy that. And because you're outside, you can forget about everything else. And it's just so liberating, I think. So that's one of the things that I'm doing. And and I'm sure there'll be other hobbies if I've got time.
Yeah, I was going to say, your time's pretty much spoken for it by the sounds of it.
I think so.
It's interesting about the lakes. I do a bit walking there myself. It's
you do? I just love it. Just love it.
Freeing and liberating, and just being away from, especially being down here, because we're in the West Midlands, we're Warwickshire. We're in terms of the natural environment, and we've got to travel a bit. So it's where are you
to get out,
from?
Isn't it?
You're
I'm not a million miles away from you then, so I'm sort of southwest Oxfordshire, about an hour and a half away from Warwick. Yeah.
Not a million miles then.
It's quite flat though. There's no mountains near me.
You struggle to find a hill in this neck of the woods. It's interesting you said that, because it's something I do quite a bit myself as well. So cool. Well, thanks for giving up your time today. It's been great to speak to you. Hopefully, we'll keep talking. If there's anything you need from us, again, if anything you need, because it may well be the case that you get a Fox customer that comes to you with an issue, and you think, well, I've got Fox at, just an email away, and you're more than welcome to send us that feedback, and if we can help out, we can. And good luck with the channel, growing your audience. I'm sure that will happen anyway.
Yeah.
And good luck with those 60 videos that you've got planned.
Yes. Yeah. Over the next 2 years, probably.
So it's not next week, by the way. But it'll keep you busy for that couple of years, I guess.
Brilliant. Well, listen, thanks for the very kind words about my channel, and absolutely, Craig, I will reach out to you if I get customers asking about Fox products.
Yeah, please do. All right. Thanks, Gary.
All right. Cheers, Em.
Cheers, then. Thank you.